Right, hi everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome and thank you for coming out to our Fall Financial Aid Night / College Affordability Night. I am Mrs. DiPaolo. I am one of the school counselors here at Wadsworth High School. Before we dive into this event, I just wanted to share a couple of upcoming college-related events that we have that your senior can participate in. Next week on Monday and Friday, we are offering open office hours during 5th period academic lab, where all of the counselors are going to be available to answer questions about college apps, Common App, school links, those kind of things, to really encourage students to push through that final drive before some of those early application deadlines on November 1st. So please encourage your senior to make it out to those if that's something you think would benefit them. Another little piece that I'd like to encourage families to let their seniors know about is on November 17th. We are actually offering a scholarship presentation also during the day just for students. And that is during academic lab. It will be in our media center, and there will be a lot of details to come in the coming weeks about that. But essentially the first half of that presentation is our College Now advisor, Dr. Ann Gates, giving a presentation on how to search for scholarships and effective uses of your time, where to find them, that kind of thing. And then I will take over that second half of the presentation and talk about our Wadsworth High School, Senior Scholarship Program. So outside of this, it is one of my most recommended presentations to be at, because everybody likes to talk about ways to get free money. So I appreciate your time, and I will now turn things over to Mrs. Nancy Dunn from College Now, who will be presenting our College Affordability Night. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having me tonight. I know Dr. Ann Gates would like to be here with you, but she had a family emergency and was unable to be here tonight. So I'm presenting in her place, but I just want to speak of how wonderful Dr. Gates is. She has many wonderful years of experience in higher education, as well as working for College Now. So please feel free to reach out to her. Her contact information is on this slide. And if you have not already, we would like for you to pull out your cell phones and register your attendance with us by using that QR code. That will let us know that you're here tonight, and will give Dr. Gates your email address so that she can contact you, and you will be able to contact her through this email address that's on the screen, so that you can ask her any questions. I will be here for a little while after the presentation tonight. You can ask me questions as well. So we're ready to flip from the screen. When we get to the very last screen, it'll have the same information as well. So tonight we are talking about college affordability. I do want to say that I sat pretty much exactly where you are last year. My oldest daughter is a first-year student in college, so all of this information, doing it as a parent is a little bit more intimidating than talking about it as a College Now advisor. But I can tell you, all of us have great experience, and we want you to feel comfortable coming to us with questions. So tonight we're going to talk about the financial aid timeline and the process that you're going to use to file for the FAFSA and reach out to your colleges for financial aid information. We're going to talk about the different types of financial aid and how to access each of those types of financial aid. We're going to also go over the FAFSA, what that is, and when to complete it, and what documents you will need to complete it. I'll talk briefly about scholarships, but I'm going to leave most of that for Dr. Gates to handle in her presentation in November. But I am also going to talk about the CSS profile, and then what you need to do after you file the FAFSA, what the next steps are. I wanted to begin by talking about the value of post-secondary education. and helping you to understand that just like when you go to buy a car, you see that sticker price, but we often don't pay that sticker price for the car. There is some negotiation that's involved with buying a car. Well, you can negotiate with colleges, I will say that, but it's often what you see on a college's website for that sticker price is not exactly what you typically pay. So don't let that overwhelm you as you're going through the application process and your student is saying they want to apply to this college or that college, and you pull up the website and you see that cost of tuition, and you're like, whoa, no, we can never afford that. Trust me, most people don't pay the sticker price that's on the website. Most people receive some kind of financial aid, scholarships, and other things, and it can make a college that you might not think that is affordable to you to be very affordable to you. So the sticker price minus the scholarships and the grants and other items that you may receive will end up being the net price. After that, it becomes the net price of what you actually pay. Okay, so what costs are associated with college? So when you do look on a college's website, you're going to see something that's called the cost of attendance. The cost of attendance is made up of these items on the screen: tuition and fees, room and board, or housing and meal plan. Those are direct costs, meaning that is exactly what the college will bill you. They will bill you for the tuition and the fees, and then if your student lives on campus, they will bill you for the housing, the dorm room, as well as the meal plan that the college may require. That's the direct costs. The indirect costs will also be on the college's website, and those are typically an average of what a typical student at the college spends on these items. The first one being books and supplies. So buying the students' books at the bookstore, or renting them, or buying them off of Amazon, or checking them out from the library, or borrowing it from a friend who may have already had the class. And then supplies, like a new laptop if your freshman needs a new laptop, or pencils and paper, calculator, whatever supplies they need to be successful as students. That price will vary from college to college, and the college will list that as an estimate of what the average student pays for books and supplies. Personal expenses can include lots of different things. It includes everything from the personal hygiene products your student will need if they're living in a dorm room: soap, shampoo, all of those good things. And then it also includes items like buying snacks for your dorm room, or going out with a friend to the movie on a Friday or Saturday night, or whatever they need to have fun too, because we want college to be fun for the students as well. So all of that is an indirect expense, indirect cost. And then the final item that the college lists under cost of attendance is transportation. That includes the transportation getting your student to and from the college, and it also includes any transportation costs that they may have while they're at college. So if they take their car, they're going to need to think about what the gas price, what they need to budget for gas while they're in college. If they're going to college in New York City, they might want to include money for how much ever it might cost for subway. But you also need to remember, if your student is going to college out in California, you're going to need to budget for airfare to and from college, and maybe even shipping if you're going to ship some of their items to California. So those are the indirect costs, and all of that depends on your student. How much they want to spend on their books, how much they want to have for their personal expenses, their budgeting, and how much they need for transportation. The colleges want you as a family to start thinking about what that budget may look like, which is why they list that on the college's website under cost of attendance. So just As you're looking at these colleges' cost of attendance, remember that almost no student on that campus pays the full price. There are a few, but not many. And that what you will use to help offset that cost is the financial aid piece. So financial aid is any money that students use to help pay for their college education. If they receive scholarships, if they receive grants, if they receive loans, then that money is meant to be used for those items listed on the cost of attendance. The tuition fees, room, board, books, supplies, personal expenses, and transportation. And all financial aid helps to pay for programs we always think of four-year colleges as being the typical college, but we like to think of college as being an expansive word these days, and it covers everything from a four-year college and a two-year college to a career center to whatever post-secondary education your student may be receiving. It could be a 6 weeks accreditation certificate program. Sometimes there's scholarships that can help pay for that. If your student is looking at cosmetology school, most cosmetology schools will take the FAFSA as well. So even if your student is not looking for a four-year college, if they're looking for any kind of post-secondary education, post-high school education, then they can apply for financial aid. So there's basically 3 types of financial aid, and I'm going to talk about these. There's the gift money, the grants and scholarships, earned money, federal work study, and borrowed money, the one that we don't like to talk about, but that we want to include so that you are aware of your options. So gift money covers any grants. Grants are need-based and usually offered by both the federal government and state government, and also the college. The college or university can also offer grant money to students. Eligibility is determined by a student's FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, and the word free is the most important part of that. It is absolutely free for you to fill out. Please do not pay anyone to fill out the FAFSA. And that is why we are here, why Dr. Gates is here at your school to help you fill out the FAFSA if you would like her to sit with you and go through that form. Grants do not need to be repaid. We love free money. The Pell Grant is the one grant that most of us know about from the federal government, but also here in Ohio, there's what we call the OCOG grant that is funded through the state of Ohio for students who are also Pell eligible. Scholarships are also very important, and we want you to apply for as many scholarships as possible. I encourage you for your student to attend that program that Dr. Gates is doing in November to learn more about where to apply for scholarships. I like to tell seniors that to think of scholarships as their part-time job. The more you work at it, the more applications you apply for, the more money you can potentially win. As I said, my daughter did this last year, and I understand parents. Sometimes it was, a little difficult to make sure that she kept applying, but she did, and she ended up receiving a very great number of scholarships that has made our life much easier this year. So scholarships can be merit-based, and when I say merit, that can be anything from academic, which is what most of us think about when we hear merit-based. So your students can be awarded merit-based scholarships based on their GPA or their test scores if they've taken an ACT or SAT. They can also be awarded merit-based for like athletic scholarships or music scholarships or theater scholarships, whatever their specific talent may be. They could be awarded a merit scholarship for that. There's also need-based scholarships, which are awarded to students who demonstrate financial need based on the FAFSA. There are scholarships that students can apply for. Here with College Now, we have a College Now specific need-based scholarship for students who are Pell eligible, but also have a 2.5 GPA or higher, and also have either an 18 on the ACT or a 960 on the SAT. they will be eligible to apply for the College Now Scholarship. So talking with Dr. Gates about that is really important. Then there's circumstance-based scholarships, and those can be anything. Those can be based on all kinds of different topics. So some employers offer circumstance-based scholarships, or you can check with your employer to see if they offer a scholarship. There's a dentist in the greater Cleveland area who always has a scholarship program. Last year they gave away $500 to 40 students in the greater Cleveland area. So I highly recommend watching for those kinds of things. The best thing about scholarships is that they do not need to be repaid, but we want you to think specific. Think about things that makes your student unique, their academic achievement. They may be able to apply for a scholarship based on the major that they're looking at in college. If they're an underrepresented student, they may be able to apply for some specific scholarships. Think local. So here in Wadsworth, think about your civic organizations, or there's the Wadsworth scholarships that they're going to talk about on the November 17th as well. Check with your place of employment. They may also offer scholarships. And think easy. There are a lot of national scholarships, but it's really hard to win a national scholarship. I'm not saying it can't be done. It can be. But when you're thinking about a national scholarship, they're taking applications from all over the country. Whereas something that's just for students who live in Ohio or live here in Wadsworth, or maybe just in the greater Cleveland area, there's a lot less there are fewer applicants. So with fewer applicants, you have a better chance of winning the scholarship. And the more scholarships you apply to, the more money you can potentially win. So the next area of financial aid is what we call federal work-study money. And this is like a part-time job. It's basically the students would get on-campus employment at the college. The way you become eligible for federal work-study money is as you're filling out the FAFSA, there will be a box to check to say, yes, I am interested in being a part of the federal work-study program. That does not guarantee you the job. So when the student gets to the college campus, they will need to talk to the Career Center on the college campus, go to the student employment website, look for jobs that they want to apply for and apply for them. Student jobs can vary from working in the bookstore or the library. Some internships that are offered for different professors, depending on the college, might be a federal work-study program. There's all kinds of jobs that a student can have on the college campus. The best thing about them is that they typically cannot schedule a student to work when the student should be in class. So they prioritize the student's class schedule, and then they schedule employment hours after that. The payment actually comes directly to the student in the form of a check. So we don't want to think about this as being something that they would use to help pay for their tuition, but this is money that they can use to help pay for those budgeted indirect costs, like their personal expenses. That's where that money can come from. And another thing about it is that students are not penalized on next year's FAFSA as reporting this as income, so that it doesn't change their FAFSA status. Then there's borrowed loans, and with borrowed loans, those are fixed interest rates. So there's the standard, the direct subsidized loan and the direct unsubsidized loan. The FAFSA application is how students become eligible for federal student loans. The FAFSA is the student loan application for students. So if you think your student may need to take out a federal student loan, then you will need to fill out the FAFSA. Even if you know that your family may not be Pell eligible, which this year the formula for Pell eligibility has changed, and some people who may not have been Pell eligible in the past may actually be Pell eligible this year. So I highly recommend filling it out. But this is the process that they become eligible for a federal loan. The first year that they're in college, a freshman can borrow $5,500 from the federal government in federal loan money. Dependent students, students who are declared dependent on the FAFSA, can borrow up to $5,500. Independent students may be able to borrow a little more. It just depends on how much they're deemed eligible for. The interest rates for these loans are set every July 1st by Congress. So students in college right now who took out a loan for this school year, the interest rate is 5.5%. The other type of federal loan that can be made available to you as a family is called the Federal Parent Plus Loan. And I highly recommend that if you take out this loan, parents, please know exactly what you're signing up for. Parent Plus loans are not in the student's name. The student is not required to pay the Parent Plus loan back. That becomes a part of the parent's debt. And the parent is required to pay the Parent Plus loan back. Parents are eligible to take out more in a Parent Plus loan during each school year than what the students are eligible to borrow under a federal student loan. And the interest rate is higher. So the interest rate for students who are currently in college this year, who have a Parent Plus loan for this school year, the interest rate is 8.05%. Those interest rates will change on July 1st of next year. The final type of loan that students and families can take out would be a private loan, there are some alternative type loans that are available from banks, credit unions, and other loan sources. We at College Now recommend that you determine who you want to borrow from on your own. Talk to your local bankers, your bank first, talk to your financial advisor on those, any other loans that you may need to take out for that. So with the FAFSA, it does not open this year until some magical date in December. So FAFSA is undergoing a complete overhaul. Typically in the last few years, FAFSA has opened on October 1st. And if you currently have a student in college or one who may have recently graduated from college, you're familiar with the old FAFSA form. That form is no longer what the FAFSA looks like. There are similar questions, but what the form looks like and the actual formula that they're using to determine Pell eligibility has completely changed. It is not open yet. It has to be open by sometime in December, but the overhaul that was mandated by Congress has made them completely revamp the entire system. They are moving it off of some computer operating system probably built in the 1990s to one that is current as of today. So there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes right now. You can go online to studentaid.gov. That is the website you need to know. That is the only website you need to know for the federal government, for student loans, for the FAFSA, for anything related to federal financial aid. Studentaid.gov is your website. They do currently have an estimator on the website. It is working most of the time. There have been a couple of days when it hasn't been working, but I recommend going on to studentaid.gov aid-estimator. It's about 5 to 6 questions. It's very simple, and it'll give you a basic idea of what your eligibility for federal student aid from the Pell Grant might be, because it's not asking you everything. It's not 100% sure that that's what your financial aid will look like, but I do recommend going onto it and looking at it and using it to determine what your estimate might be. So we're going to go over the FAFSA. Studentaid.gov. As I said, this is completely free, and it is through the Department of Education and the Federal Student Aid Office. It does give the Department of Education, the state of Ohio, and colleges a baseline to measure what they call the student's need, the student's financial need. It calculates what's called a student aid index. If you've done this in the past, it's been called the EFC. It is no longer called the estimated, the family's cost, the EFC, and it's now called SAI. And you do have to complete the FAFSA every year that your student is in college. That is very important. A lot of times students forget that, but just to know, so next year this time you'll log in, because it will open on October 1st, 2024. They promised us that. You will be able to log in and do your FAFSA for next year, which would, that federal aid would be applied to your student's sophomore year in college. So we do know that it's going to open up in December 2023. I promise you, as soon as we know the date, you will know the date. I will probably shoot off fireworks from my house because I will know when the FAFSA opens. It has changed for the look and feel, and the process for how it is completed has changed. There are fewer questions. There's 36 questions, but there could be 36. There's like question 1, part A, part B, part C. But there are only 36 questions. They do exclude more income, so some families who may not have been Pell eligible in the past because of certain parts of the income that were included might be Pell eligible now. You do need that FSA ID to start it. If you have a student in college, you've done the FAFSA with them, then you already have your FSA ID. The student needs an FSA ID. The parent needs an FSA ID. The FSA ID is tied to the individual's social security number. So mom needs an FSA ID using her social security number. Student needs an FSA ID using his or her social security number. And the dad would also need an FSA ID. If there's step-parents involved, they will probably need one as well. We're going to talk about that in a second for parents of families that you might be wondering whose information goes on the FAFSA. We'll touch on that in just a second. The number of students a family has enrolled in college will no longer factor into FAFSA calculation. That is one concern that we do have, is knowing that in past years when they've given us the EFC and you have 2 students in college, they would take that EFC number, divide that by 2, and that would lower that EFC number for a family. We are concerned that there might be some families who might not be Pell eligible anymore, but colleges also know that, and colleges are expecting to pick up some of that on their end to offer more financial aid. That does depend on the college. They get to make that decision. So students will need to invite the contributors. Parents are now considered a contributor. That's your new name, your new title on the FAFSA is contributor, to complete their part of the FAFSA. It is role-based, so we'll go through how you get started with it in just a minute. Contributors will have to give consent to the IRS to share their federal tax information with FAFSA. This is a very important change. In the past, as you were filling out the FAFSA, you would get to a spot where it would say, would you like for us to transfer your information from the IRS to your FAFSA form? It was something that you said yes or no to. If you said yes, and it was able to retrieve that information, it brought that information directly into your FAFSA form, which is very helpful. If you said no, then you would enter in everything by hand. You can still enter information in by hand, but your FAFSA will not be considered completed. It will only be considered as a preliminary FAFSA. So the very first question when you log in with your FSA ID will be, do you give consent for the FSA, for the Federal Student Aid Office to pull your information from the IRS and put it into the FAFSA? The reason for this is because when they know they transfer that information directly over, whether you filed taxes or not. If you didn't file taxes, then the IRS will tell FAFSA that we have no record of this person filing taxes, so there's no tax information for you to consider. The reason for this is that will actually eliminate, hopefully, a process called verification that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. So once you complete the FAFSA, you will get the student aid index, which does replace that expected family contribution. A lot of families saw that EFC and thought that was exactly how much they would have to pay for their student to go to college, but that's not always the case. And the SAI looks totally different. When you finish the FAFSA, in the past you received what was called a student aid report. That also has changed. It is now called the FAFSA submission summary, which will give you your SAI, your student aid index, and more information about the FAFSA. Okay, so contributors need to, here's what you need to complete the FAFSA. You need that FSA ID. So both students and parents need their FSA ID. If it's the mom and the stepdad completing the FAFSA, then mom and stepdad will both need the FSA ID. You will also need tax returns. So if your student worked in the spring of their sophomore year, summer between sophomore and junior year, and the fall of their junior year, and they file taxes, so that's tax year 2022, then their tax information will need to be on the FAFSA as well. Yeah, that'll be pulled directly from the IRS. So the tax information is from 2022. If you received any child support in the last year, that information will also go on the FAFSA. It used to be that you have to put, if you pay and you receive, but now it's just receive. The asset information is the value of cash, savings, and checking. So the question on the FAFSA reads like this. As of today, what is the value of your cash, savings, and checking account? I always recommend to families to think about, if you are filling the FAFSA on the day that you got paid, don't put that amount down. Think about what is the average amount you have in your checking account for the month. After you've paid your bills, that's the amount you want to put in. So it's going to be cash, savings, and checking for both you and the student. The student will also put in their information. If you have any investments, stocks, and things like that, that value will go down as well. Retirement accounts are not included on the FAFSA. If you have a 529 account, if your student has a 529 account, if the information has a parent listed on that 529 account, then put that under the parent and not the student. But the amount that's in the 529 account has to go on the FAFSA somewhere between the parent or the student. If you own a business or a farm, this is the change that many of us are waiting to see what happens this year. In previous years, if you owned a small business that had less than 100 employees, you did not include the net worth of that business on your FAFSA, but this is a change. So when Congress voted to change the FAFSA in 2020, that's when they voted on this. That was one of the changes that was added. So if you own a small business or if you own a farm, you're going to put down the net worth. Now, if you own a farm and you live on the farm in a farmhouse, you're not going to put down the value of the home that you live in on that farm, but you will need to put in the net worth of your farm on the FAFSA. You will need to list any federal benefits that you receive, and you will also include the list of, the student will put on their portion of the FAFSA the names of the colleges that they are applying to. And here is another change. In previous years, students could list up to 10 colleges. And throughout the school year, they would come back to us and say, I decided I wanted to apply to this college instead. So then we would have to log into the FAFSA, take off a college, and put on that college. Well, now Student Aid has decided that a student can list up to 20 colleges. And your counselor is probably going to shake their head at that. I don't recommend applying to 20 colleges. We do recommend that you, when you're going through the process, pick the top 5 to 8 colleges that your student really seems like they're going to go to, that seem like they can be really valid options for your student. But if you need to list more than 10, you can list up to 20. That's as many as you can list. And yes, you can still, if a student applies to 20 colleges and then decides they want to change, yes, they can log back in, take a college off, put one on. But that's kind of it's not recommended, because when you start getting those financial aid award letters and you've been accepted to 20 colleges, you've got some serious things to consider. And we want your students not to feel all that stress. So 5 to 8, that's what I recommend, yes.
Under net worth, in the past world of FAFSA, equity in your home you live in was not included. Is that still the case?
That is correct. So the question was, do you need to include the value of your home, what your home is worth, the equity of your home? No, that is not included on the FAFSA. So the first step to beginning the FAFSA this year is creating that FSA ID. So if the mom, dad, parent, whoever the parent is for this student, if you already have an FSA ID, you do not need to create a new one. However, your student does. Your student will need an FSA ID. And I recommend that you go home tonight and start that process. I know that Dr. Gates can help your student with that as well. They will need to have their social security number. If your student doesn't know their social security number, now is the time to make them memorize it, because they will begin to need it a lot in their life. So that's the first step, is doing that FSA ID. So you can create an FSA ID by going to studentaid.gov. Up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see the words log in or create account. Clicking on create account is how you can start your FSA ID. You'll come to a page that right now it still has the same picture on it of a lady on a bicycle. So if you find yourself on the lady on a bicycle page, you're in the right place to do your FSA ID. You'll need your social security number, your legal name as it appears on your social security card, and your date of birth. So if you go by a preferred name or any other nickname or whatever, make sure that you're not using that name when you're creating your FSA ID. You need to use your legal name. And once you'll need to create a username and a password. That username must be unique to you. No other person in the United States can have that same username. So if it gives you a red box saying that you can't use that username, that's because someone else already has it. Come up with another one. Your password will be unique to you, and then it's going to give you a list of challenge questions that you can use to help you get back into the FSA ID if you ever forget your password. You cannot use the same answer for all of your challenge questions. I have had students try to do that in the past. And the answer to your challenge question must be at least 3 characters or longer. 2 characters don't work. Okay, so here's the big question of who is my parent for the FAFSA purpose? Married parents. If your parents are married, then you will report both of their financial information on the FAFSA. If you filed taxes married filing jointly, then only one parent will need to finish filling out the FAFSA, because that one parent should have all of the financial information. So it'll be the student and one parent. If your married parents filed married filing separately, then both parents get the fun of doing the FAFSA, and it'll be the student and both parents. They'll each have a section that they need to complete. If parents are living together but not married, then both information for both parents is still involved on the FAFSA. If parents are not living together, if parents are separated, legally separated or divorced, then this year the ruling from FSA is that the parent who gives the most financially, the parent who supports the student the most financially, is the parent's information that should be reported on the FAFSA. Some parents find that just kind of hard to figure out. I always look at students and say, so if you live with one parent, the year is 365 days long. If you live with a parent, that one extra day, then that can be the parent you put on the FAFSA. Some families will do what they need to do to figure this out. They'll put down whichever parent they want. We're advising you to put down the parent that supports you, the student, the most financially. Yes.
So if parents file taxes married filing jointly, do both parents still need the FSA ID or only one?
Only one. The question was about parents who are married and they filed their taxes jointly. Only one parent should need the FSA ID. That's what we've been told by FSA. It doesn't hurt for both parents to have an FSA ID, and then whichever parent logs into the FAFSA first and fills it out, they win the FAFSA race. Make it a little friendly competition. If parents are remarried, then it would be like the mom supports the student the most financially, then it would be mom and mom's step parent. There would be the mom and the step parent. If the dad is the one that supports the student the most financially, it would be the dad and the step parent. It would not be mom and dad in that case. It would be the mom and step parent, dad and step parent. These people are not considered parents on the FAFSA unless they have legally adopted the student. So a widowed step parent. So if the student is living with their step parent who has been widowed and that's the student's primary caregiver, then that step parent would not put their information on the FAFSA. Grandparents raising their grandchildren. Unless that grandparent has legally adopted the student, then the grandparent does not put their financial information on the FAFSA. Foster parents, legal guardians, older brothers and sisters who are acting as a legal guardian and taking care of a younger sibling, aunts and uncles who might be the primary caregiver for a student. If they have not legally adopted the student and there is no paperwork from a court that says that they're legally adopting the student, then they are not going to put their information on the FAFSA. If they have legal guardianship, the student may need to show that information to the college to show that that person is their legal guardian, but the legal guardian's information is not included on the FAFSA. If you're unsure how this might apply to you, then please make an appointment with Dr. Gates and talk with her. She can answer this question for you individually, because we know every family is different and every family's needs are different. So please talk to Dr. Gates. She can help you figure out exactly who needs to be on your FAFSA. So independent students. Independent students are students who meet the following qualifications, and independent students do not need to have parent financial information included on the FAFSA. All other students are considered dependent students, and their parents' financial information must go on the FAFSA. So they have to be married, This is where I always remind everyone, the FAFSA is for everyone who goes to college. So from everyone from an 18-year-old going to college for the first time, or me going back to get a master's degree, or someone who's going in their 30s or 40s who decide, oh wait, I really want to go get my bachelor's degree. They also can file the FAFSA. Everyone in college uses this same form. Students are always like, I'm 18, why are they asking me if I'm married? It's for everyone. So if you're married, if you have children or other dependents who receive more than half of their support from you, or this would be for the student. If the student is an armed services veteran or currently on active duty, if a student is an unaccompanied youth who is homeless, who is self-supporting and at risk of being homeless, or at any time since age 13, the student has had both parents deceased, the student has been in foster care, or the student is dependent or ward of a court. And I also include here, if a student at any time after the age of 13 was in foster care and then adopted out of foster care after they're 13, that adopted parent is the only adopted parent who does not have to include their information on a FAFSA. Okay? So only students who meet these qualifications don't have to include parent financial information on a FAFSA. So here's what the website looks like. You'll go to studentaid.gov. You can click on Create Account to create your FSA ID. Then when it's time, when that magical date finally comes in December and we can finally do the FAFSA, you'll go to over here on the left and you'll click FAFSA form. It's kind of a hover down menu. You'll click Begin your FAFSA and you'll start your FAFSA there. So steps 2 and steps 3, once you've created that FSA ID, step 2, the student. The student is considered the owner of the FAFSA form, and the student should be the one to start the FAFSA form. The student will start the form, they'll start filling it out, they'll include information about themselves, their name, their address, what high school they attend, what colleges they're applying to, their financial information, and then they will also do what's called a parent wizard. The parent wizard, the student will answer specific questions on that, and that will help them determine which parent, who needs to be considered a contributor on this FAFSA. So the student will be able to figure that out. The student will then put in this parent's name, the parent's social security number. So this is where you might want to sit with your student while they're doing the parent wizard so you can put in your social security number. And the parent's email address. The parent birth date. So this is where you can always have fun, see if your student actually knows the month, day, and year that you were born. So then once they enter that information in, the parents will then, within minutes, receive an email from studentaid.gov saying, hey, your student has started the FAFSA. Please click here and do your parent portion of the FAFSA. The student will not be able to see any of the parent financial information that you put in. That was always a concern with the old FAFSA. It was all one giant document on the computer, and the student could then see everything about the parent's financial information. And some parents really did not like that. So that was changed. So the student will only input their information in. You as the parent will put in your information, and they will not be able to see your financials. So then you'll move on to steps 4, 5, and 6. You'll complete that portion of your FAFSA that is up to you. The student will be able to see on their student portal if the parent has started it, and they'll be able to see when the parent finishes it. And the last person, either the student or the parent or both parents, if they're both contributors, will then need to click the submit button. They have the honor, the privilege of hitting that button. Then that is submitted. So then what happens from there is that the student will receive the email saying, hey, your FAFSA's been submitted. You can look, and on that email, it will tell them what their student aid index is, and then it'll also tell them they can log into the student portal, and the students will be able to see that student aid index. So parents, yes, you want to sit with your students and do this process together. You can make an appointment and come to College Now's office hours here at Wadsworth High School and meet with Dr. Gates and do it together. She can walk you through this whole process, and then you can have this all done, and it only takes about 30 to 45 minutes. Yes?
Going back to the two previous slides, when you said married parents, only one of them has to do that. On the parent wizard section, do they still list both parents or just the parents?
So they're going to list, if married parents filed their taxes jointly, then they only have to put down one, but they need to put down the one who has an FSA ID. So this is where if both parents have an SAID, they can put down both. Both will receive that email, and then whichever one logs in first and completes the FAFSA, that's great. Yeah. So then step 6, they receive that email that tells them what their student aid index is. It will give them a preliminary understanding of what their Pell Grant may be if they are eligible for a Pell Grant. The Pell Grant amount will be determined by Congress sometime in December, January, we all hope. Last year, the Pell Grant was $7,395. That was a full Pell Grant, so a student who who's eligible for the full Pell Grant can receive that much money, $7,395, which goes directly to the college to help offset the student's tuition, fees, room and board. Typically, the Pell Grant amount does go up, but we're never sure. It can go up anywhere between $100 to $400. So the SAI, how the SAI works and why it's important to you, that student aid index. So that amount that's listed on the college's website, that cost of attendance, the colleges will receive the information for what your SAI is, so you can take that cost of attendance, subtract the student aid index, and that will give the federal government and that college and you an understanding of what your financial need is. So that once they know then the college, depending on the college, they may be able to offer you more institutional financial aid, depending on the college. The student aid index does not change from school to school. That part stays the same, but because the cost of attendance varies from school to school, your financial need will vary from college to college. So for example, I'm going to round out the number for Ohio State. They're approximately $30,000. So they'll take that $30,000 for one school year, subtract out your student aid index, and that will give you what your financial need is. Then what you want to do as a family is to try to make that up through scholarships. Maybe Ohio State has some additional scholarships they can award you, things like that. Now, if you're looking at a college like Case Western or Kenyon or Denison, those price tags can be anywhere between like $60,000 to $84,000. Kenyon is $84,000. So that's a lot of money. But I can also tell you that most students at Kenyon don't pay that full price, or at Case. So they'll take that cost of attendance, subtract out that student aid index, and then they can make additional money available to you for your financial need. So step 7 and step 8, that's the final processes in the FAFSA process. Step 7 is that the information from the FAFSA will then be sent to the colleges that your student listed on their FAFSA. So this is why it's really important to make sure that you know which schools your student is applying to, so that they can list those on their FAFSA. Once the admissions department says, hey, we're going to admit Susie to our college, then the admissions will tell financial aid, hey, Susie's going to come to our college. Can you please figure out their financial aid? Take their financial aid their FAFSA information to create what's called a financial aid award letter. So every college that your student is admitted to who receives your FAFSA will prepare a financial aid award letter for you to look at to help you then determine which college is the best financial fit. Step 8 is you get to receive those award letters. You get those letters, sometimes they still come through the snail mail. More often than not, they're coming to the student's email address that they used when they applied to that college. Also, it will be on the student's college portal. Every school that your student applies to, they will also create a student portal for that student. So if they apply to Ohio State, they'll have an Ohio State portal. If they apply to NYU, they'll have an NYU portal. And they'll need to log into those portals. So I recommend creating a sheet where you're listing in all of those username and passwords for every one of those student portals that your student gets this year. You'll log into that portal, and you'll be able to see that financial aid award letter. So with award letters, they all look different. Every single one of them from every college is different. So we have a worksheet that we can help you use so you can compare apples to apples. On that award letter, they will list the cost of attendance. They'll spell that out, showing you exactly what the tuition and fees and things are. And then it'll show you, hey, we're giving you this amount of, you've got this amount of federal Pell Grant money or this amount of Ohio, the OCOG money. They'll list out all of that gift money. They'll also list out the institutional aid, any kind of financial aid the college is going to give your student. It will also list any scholarships, merit, academic, or athletic scholarships that the college is giving to your student. Additional scholarships that they applied for, the college doesn't know about them, so those won't be on your award letter. It'll also give you the opportunity to see if your student, how much work-study money they could potentially earn at that college, as well as any federal student loans they might need to borrow. All of that will be listed on your financial aid letter. Oftentimes people forget that number that they show you at the bottom when they're showing you this is how much it's going to cost you to come here, to remember that that actually includes those federal loans. They're assuming you're going to take those out, which is why we like to make sure that you're using a worksheet so that you can see exactly what it's going to cost you to go to the college so you can determine if you want to take out those loans or not. You'll get that once you get those letters, start filling out those worksheets, and then when you make that decision, by the time that you get to April, you're using that to help you to decide. So some things to remember is that this FAFSA year begins sometime in December. You will be using the 2022 taxes. So if you have not filed your 2022 taxes, and you need to, if you requested an extension on your 2022 taxes, please go home, do those taxes. FAFSA generates every type of financial aid for you. That is why colleges really want every student to fill it out. And most colleges really want you to finish your FAFSA by February 15th. In the previous years, colleges have wanted it done before the winter holiday break, but now since it's not opening up until December, they're extending that to February 15th. But check with the colleges that your student is applying for, because sometimes they will say a sooner date, an earlier date, like February 1, because they need that information for some scholarship information. So it is very quick this year. 3 other things to remember after completing the FAFSA: the verification process, a CSS profile, which is another financial aid form I'm going to talk about, and then special circumstances. So quick talking about verification. Verification basically means your FAFSA has either been randomly selected, or maybe they noticed a small error when completing the form that the college will then do verification, which is like an audit. They're just going to have you fill out some worksheets to make sure that the information that you put in on your FAFSA is exactly correct. But if you are selected for verification, the college will notify you, which is why it's very important for your student to be checking their emails from their colleges. It's very important. I know students often don't check emails, but parents, please make sure they check their emails at least 2 or 3 times a week during the school year, because it's going to be very important so you don't miss any deadlines. You'll need to do the verification process, then the college will confirm that what you did was correct, and they'll also let you know any documents that you might need to complete it. The CSS profile is another type of financial aid form that only certain colleges ask for. It is completed through College Board, so the SAT, the AP, that website, it is done through your student's login information. If your student is looking at highly selective colleges, so colleges who might have an admission rate of 10% or less, then they're going to want you to complete the CSS profile. In the state of Ohio, if your student is applying to Case Western, Kenyon, Denison, Oberlin, Cleveland Institute of Music, and the College of Worcester, then you will need to complete a CSS profile. The College of Worcester will tell you to either do the CSS profile or their specific financial aid estimator, their net price calculator on their website. But if you're applying to any of those other colleges, then just add the College of Worcester to your list to do your CSS profile. It is required. Case Western will not even look at your college application until they know the financial aid office has received your CSS profile. So please, if you've got any of those colleges on your list. If your student is applying to any Ivy League college, if they're applying to Carnegie Mellon, if they're applying to Duke University, they're applying to the University of North Carolina, and there's a lot of colleges out in California. They all require the CSS profile. Please look on this website to see if your students' colleges are one of these 400 schools. It is open, and you need to complete it by whatever deadline that college sets. Case Western's deadline is November 15th. They're going to want the FAFSA as well, so it's not a CSS profile or the FAFSA, it's a both. They want both. But they know that the CSS profile is open. They also know that FAFSA is not. So they want your CSS profile sooner rather than later. It is not free. It does cost $25 for each school, for the first school, and $16 for any additional school after that. If your family's adjusted gross income is less than $100,000, then it is a free application. It asks for more information than the FAFSA, and every school has the right to ask for different information. For example, Northwestern will ask you to include information about the cars that you own and any loans that you may have out on those cars. Some other questions include how much is your parent, if your parents have student loans, what are their monthly payments? They can ask all kinds of information, and it does vary from school to school, so I can't tell you exactly what's on it. It does take longer to fill out than the FAFSA, so set aside about an hour or 2 hours. The nice thing is that as you're doing this form, it does save, so you can come back to it and finish it at another time. But we can help you with that too. Special circumstances. So the FAFSA uses the financial information from your 2022 taxes. Your family's income may have drastically changed since 2022 based on any of these things that may have happened to your family. A job layoff, a reduction in hours worked, medical, dental, and nursing home expenses that you were not expecting that were not covered by the cost of insurance, a family's divorce or separation, critical illness or disability in the family that causes a reduction in income or increased medical expenses, a death in the family, income from a rental property, court settlement, or alimony that is no longer available. If any of these have affected your family's income since you filed your 2022 taxes, so in the 2023 year, then you can file what's called a special circumstance with the college. So the CSS profile actually gives you a place to put that information in as you're completing it. The FAFSA does not. So as you're filling out these applications, just know that on the CSS profile, the very last question is, do you have any special circumstances that we should be aware of? On the FAFSA, there's no place to put it. So if your family has experienced any of this, then you'll go to the college's financial aid website, and they may have a special form they want you to fill out. If you see nothing listed on the financial aid website about special circumstances, call the financial aid office. Do not hesitate to call the financial aid office if you have any questions on anything with financial aid at your college. They are there to help, and they will certainly give you the best answer possible. They have ways on their end to change information about your family's financial need that we at College Now do not have. We can simply help you fill out the forms and answer questions. They have more ability on their end. So we highly recommend, if you've experienced any of these special circumstances, to talk to the college's financial aid office. Okay, so now is a great time to ask questions. Please let me know. Yes?
What was the CSS profile website?
It is on College Board's website. So your student will go to College Board. They'll use their College Board login. So if your student has taken a PSAT, an SAT, or an AP exam, they have a login. And they will need to log in for you, and then you can work on that profile. Any other questions?
Is there a place to access this yet?
Yes. Your counseling department will have all of this information available. There are some handouts in the back in case you didn't pick those up on the steps to create an FSA ID, as well as information about the forms, the financial information that you need to do the FAFSA. Wow. Any other questions? Okay, great. I was about to say, I did too.
Scholarship presentation for the students, will they have that on like a website if they can't go to the presentation?
Yes. And they can always make an appointment. You can make an appointment with Dr. Gates. You can do that by going to this website that's listed here at the bottom, the cngc.org/Wadsworth. That will pull up what's called her Microsoft Bookings page, and you can book an appointment directly with her. And if you didn't register your attendance with us, please do. You can use that QR code to let us know you were here. Any other questions?
I've got one. You said reduction hours for retirement accounts are not calculated in the assets.
So the money that you have in your retirement account does not go on the FAFSA, but if you are retired and you're drawing money from your retirement account to help pay for everyday living, then the amount that you're withdrawing from that retirement account will go on the FAFSA as part of your income. Yes. Good question. All questions are good. Yes.
You were talking about the parent that contributes the most financially.
Yes.
Okay, so a parent that would be the residential parent and the other one that would have like a typical visitation schedule that's paying child support, would the residential parent be considered?
So yeah, that's a really good question. The question was about who would be considered the parent that supports the student the most financially. That really is something that you as a family can determine. Generally, I tend to think that the parent that the student lives with is probably supporting the student the most financially because you're providing the roof over the head and as well as other things, the typical day-to-day expenses, while the other parent may be giving a large sum of money in parental support. that may or may not be equivalent to that. So that really is a determination that you can determine. And sometimes it also is going to depend on which parent will actually sit down and do the FAFSA with the student. We do know that sometimes there's in a family situation that a parent who might just simply refuse if they're in that divorced or separated situation. So whichever parent at that point will actually fill out the FAFSA is the parent that we're going to work with the most. So it really is up to you as a family, but the federal government will tell you that they want it to be the family, the parent who provides the most financially for the student.
Okay, thank you very much. It just seemed very vague.
It is very vague for a reason. We kind of do, I'm leaving it up to you as the family, and I also know that there's parents that just, in that situation, we often will do whichever parent will say, I'm going to complete this form for the student. Other questions? If you have a question that you want to ask individually up here, I'll come down here, but if you want to ask, if you have a burning question tonight that you simply must ask, but you don't want to ask it in front of the entire audience, that is perfectly okay. I'll hang out for a few minutes and be able to answer those. Otherwise, I think our time together is concluded. Thank you for coming. And I do recommend, please contact Dr. Gates. She is here to support you.